Death and the Little Girl. From a book of old-fashioned fairy tales and fables by Chuma Ikenza. Once upon a time, there was a little girl who was always alone. She is a strange child, said the adults. She is weird and does not like noise, said the other children. That was why nobody kept her company or played with her. True, it was a bit lonely sometimes, but it wasn't boring at all. She had the company of many thoughts that came to visit her. She saw them and spoke to them as if they were standing before her in person. She spoke to them in a language without words. The thoughts that came to the little girl were all very different. They were also dressed very differently. There were sad thoughts, dressed in gray, sagging clothes. There were happy ones, in rose-colored garments with gold sequins. There were funny thoughts that had faces painted in bright colors. Then there were blue thoughts that told tales with their eyes fixed upon unseen places, far in the distance. One had to maintain silence around themselves if they wished to understand the thoughts that came to visit. That was why the little girl preferred to go to the village cemetery by herself, to sit down among the graves and await the arrival of her friends. As she waited, she saw that thoughts came to visit the graves too. Over time, the girl came to know all the graves by name. It was interesting for her to see which thoughts came to visit which grave. There were also graves from which thoughts appeared to stay away. It was as if thoughts did not like it by those graves, or perhaps the occupants of the graves had left altogether. She learned a lot about what the thoughts at the graves had to say about a person. Sometimes what they said about the dead was not flattering. The girl had learned from experience which graves were best to sit by to wait for her friendly thoughts. One day, when the little girl was sitting in the cemetery waiting, a figure in a gray robe came striding through the grave mounds toward her. This was a new figure that she had never seen before. As the figure approached, she asked, "Are you a thought too? If so, you are much bigger than the thoughts that usually visit me or that I see here. You are also more beautiful than any of the thoughts that visit here." The figure walked up to her, sat down beside her, and said, "Now, how can I best answer your question? I am probably a thought. Yet again, I am a little more than a thought. It is not easy for me to explain that to you." "Okay," said the girl. "I don't need to understand. It's nice just to look at you, but can you at least tell me your name? My thought friends always tell me their names. Sometimes the name is pleasant. Sometimes it is funny. Sometimes it is bad. Can you tell me some of these names?" said the figure. "Of course," said the girl. "There are the pleasant names like hope, kindness, gratitude, and help. Then there are the funny names like prank and tease. But funny thoughts can also cause sadness for others. I am still trying to figure out why that is so." Then the girl stopped and looked sadly at the figure in the gray robe and asked, "Do I really have to tell you the names that are bad? I never like to see them. I see many of them coming to visit the people in the graves in this cemetery." "I understand," said the figure in the gray robe, "but I still want to know the name of at least one bad thought." The little girl was silent for a while, trying to choose which name to mention. Finally, she decided on fear. It was one of the most common among the living and the dead. It was also the one that seemed to take on many shapes. It constantly changed and transformed to assume different names. The figure in the gray robe nodded his head in understanding when the girl mentioned fear. Then he looked the little girl in the eyes and said, "My name is Death." He had expected the girl to become afraid. But she wasn't frightened at all. She was just astonished and surprised that Death looked so beautiful. She was glad that she could sit so quietly next to Death. "You know," she said, "it's funny that many people feel fear when they talk about you or hear your name. I can see that you are so nice. I would like to be your friend." "Nobody likes to be friends with me," said Death to the girl. "But I want to play with you," said the girl to Death. Quickly she invented a game they could play and turned to Death and said, "How about we play a game of building castles in heaven and on earth? We will make the castles in the sky out of light-colored pebbles, and the ones on earth out of the dark ones. But first we have to look for these stones." Death went to great lengths to please the girl by helping her find and collect the most perfect pebbles. "Now," said the girl, "we have enough to start our game. Do you want to build in the sky while I build on earth, or the other way around? It doesn't matter to me. You can choose." "Thank you very much," said Death, "but I am no longer a child and no longer understand how to build like one. I think you should build the castles in heaven and on earth. I can help you with both." "That's nice of you," said the girl. She started by building the castle in the sky, followed by the one on earth. After she had finished, with Death helping her, the girl pointed. "Here is heaven, where God lives, and here is earth, where I live. You need a place to live too, but I don't know where to build a castle for you." "I live between heaven and earth," said Death. "I have to lead human souls from earth to heaven. Unknown to many, I also lead souls from heaven to earth. On such occasions I am called Birth." "I see," said the girl. "Then we will build a castle for you made of light and dark pebbles, and we will place it between heaven and earth. It will be a fine castle." Death was happy and watched the girl build a castle for him. After she finished building the castle for Death, she turned to him and said, "You told me that you lead human souls from heaven to earth and from earth back to heaven. Tell me a little bit more about that. Also, why do humans have to come to earth to be born? And why we have to die to go back to heaven? Why don't we just drop down from heaven or go back by ourselves when we choose? And how do you know when a soul is ready to come to earth or when it is time to leave?" As the little girl was asking these questions, the bells announcing the end of the working day started to ring. "Do you hear those bells ringing?" asked Death. "Yes," the girl replied. "Okay. I shall answer your last question," said Death. "You see, it is very similar with human souls. Every human soul has a bell attached to it. If the soul is attuned and listens carefully, it can hear its own bell ringing. The soul's bell rings during happy and sad hours. With some, it rings only weakly, and that is a bad sign. But the weak sound has nothing to do with me or with illness. The weakness is only a sign of the quality of the soul. Nevertheless, when I come to a person, the bell of their soul rings like it is the end of the working day. All I do then is hang their bell in the sky, where it continues to ring." "Do all the bells in the sky ring at the same time?" asked the little girl. "I suppose that each bell would have its own tone, and I can imagine how this mix of tones would sound, especially when the mix is made up of lovely, ugly, loud, and confusing sounds. It cannot be pleasing to listen to this mix of disharmonious sounds." "That is very true," said Death. "But you see, many souls have to come back to earth many times, bringing their bells back with them. Both the souls and the bells are then worked over until they have their own proper peal so that they can ring in harmony with other bells." Then Death added, "That should give you an idea of how many trips I have to make between heaven and earth." "I'm very sorry to hear that," said the girl. "You certainly have a very tedious job." "Not to worry, I hope things will get better. Then you will have more time for us to play together." Death nodded, but his eyes looked very sad and far away. Suddenly, the little girl remembered the castle she had built for Death and said to him, "Your castle is ready. Isn't it pretty?" "It is very pretty," said Death. "Thank you so much for it. But it's late, and you have to go home now. It was nice playing with you." "Good night," said the girl, and she curtsied. "I hope you will be able to make time in your busy schedule to see me again. I have not enjoyed myself as much as I did today." "Yes," said Death gently. "I will visit you very soon because I see that you are so alone." Soon the little girl fell ill. People said that she was going to die. Some were sad because they believed that it was only right to feel sad when another person was going to die, especially. if the person was a child whose life still lay ahead. But this girl was a strange child. The grown-ups didn't understand her, and the little ones didn't like to play with her. Many secretly felt that perhaps it was better this way, though they would not say so out loud. When the bells were ringing for the end of that day, Death stepped into the little girl's room. "It's nice of you to come and see me," said the girl. "It's closing time," said Death as he sat down on her bed. "Yes," said the girl. "You told me about it when we were building castles together. I see that you have come to lead me away, to detach my bell from my soul. I just hope it sounds nice, so that God will not be bothered by its sound." "They long for a pure bell in heaven," said Death. "That is why they asked me to come to you." "So I have to die?" asked the girl. "You don't need to call it that," said Death. "You see, it's very simple. Look over there. Do you see the 2 angels at your door? They will lead you to heaven." Death then took the girl in his arms and handed her to the 2 radiant angels with shimmering wings. The angels led the little girl to heaven, where her bell started to ring. It was a long time since such a pure bell had rung above after its end of days on earth. It was very beautiful in heaven, and the girl was no longer a strange child. The big angels understood her. The little angels played with her. The Lord was pleased that he had received such a pure soul, whose bell emitted a sweet sound. Although the girl was very happy in heaven, she felt sad when she thought about Death, who had to stay on earth among people who were too afraid to open themselves to him. She knew the pain of not being understood. One day, as she looked down upon the cemetery, the girl saw Death standing there, having just led someone to the grave. "Can you hear me?" she called down to Death. "Yes, I can," said Death. "I'm glad you can hear me," said the girl. "It is a shame that I can't play with you anymore, and that nobody plays with you." "Don't be too sad about that," said Death. "It was nice that you played with me. When I get sad, I can hear your bell ringing above, and then I am happy that I am friends with the child whose soul produces that sound." "Yes, remember that," said the girl. "And I want to tell you something wonderful, something the great angels told me." "What did they tell you?" asked Death. "The great angels say that a time is coming when all the bells will give forth only sweet sounds and ring together harmoniously, and all people will play with Death." That news lifted Death's spirits. It was exactly what he had been dying to hear. It filled him with hope and made his task bearable. It also put a smile on his face. Seeing the smile on Death's face, the girl was glad that she had made Death happy, and she no longer felt sad about leaving Death all alone on earth without a friend.